Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L here to talk about My Hero Academia chapter 367. Hey, how are ya? Anyway guys, yeah, I'm gonna do this. I don't think it's gonna be a very long video. Like, I personally, I feel just whelmed. I'm not underwhelmed or overwhelmed. It's just kind of whelming. I wasn't really feeling the chapter too much. I felt like, you know, to me, the chapter feels like a checklist kind of thing. It feels like something the author felt he had to do and just get it through. Is there anything worth talking about in terms of what we see here with Izuku's little freak out? Yeah, there's like big, bold points. One of them is Mirio is just the best. Like Mirio is quite literally the only, like, the reason why Izuku didn't lose here, or like that Shigaraki didn't win this little battle, or All For One didn't win this little battle. Mirio's the real hero. While he doesn't have the power, like, this is one of those moments where, like, Aizawa saying that Mirio was the closest to number one is like, I can maybe believe it, because like this guy's coming in here, he's making Shigaraki laugh with a good joke, and he's calming down Izuku, like, who just went crazy for a little bit there. Yeah, no, man, the man's coming in and he's pulling all the emotional saves here. But yeah, like, I talked about this a lot in the live stream, but when I look at this chapter, you know, I personally, I don't really want to follow a main character that doesn't listen to other people. I don't want to follow a main character that has such a bad self-esteem issue that he's being saved once more by the guy that saved him from giving him his power. I don't want to follow a main character who needs to have an excuse for why he shouldn't give other people his powers. The excuse being, if he gives someone else one for all, like, they're gonna lose their lifespan. He needs that excuse because Izuku doesn't have that kind of behavior. Like, it was cool when you could see his flaw and you saw what was going to happen because he was going to self-destruct when he did the Dark Izuku arc. You knew that was going to, like, that was cool because it's reliable to see the flaw here. But when you have a guy who just shows up and the first thing he does is start yelling and screaming, not even really reflecting on himself, he just starts yelling and screaming. So much yelling and screaming that he doesn't even move, and he's shaking the environment and, potentially imperiling the other people. You have a situation where he's just yelling while Shigaraki has all the time to just gloat. That's not cool. That's pretty lame. It's just like, that's not really fun to follow. But that's my perspective. See, the thing is, like, it really depends on what kind of reader you are, I think. Like, if you're the kind of person that sees these characters as kids and you're like, oh, well, he is a child. This kind of stuff, you shouldn't expect him to be emotionally developed. Like, yeah, Mirio is only 2 years older, but that's still 2 years. That makes a difference. Also worth pointing out that Mirio is just also way more mature and has actually experienced more hardship than Izuku has. Also, like, just remember, Mirio's the kind of person that actually put in work when he was a child. Like, if Mirio and Izuku both have their quirks taken away from them, we all know who's winning that fight. It's the man that survived Shizaki, a guy who was said to be faster than Rappa, so fast that he killed Rappa in an instant, right? That's who Mirio is. Mirio's actually the stereotypical hero. He is the proper archetype of the hero, but I'm digressing. If you argue from the perspective of, like, this is a normal kid, then you're kind of arguing down the same lines that makes Ochako like a really good character. Like, she's relatable and she's a good character because she actually has a very believable character arc. Arguing that way of Izuku's a child, you shouldn't expect, like, emotional control from this guy. He's also a child with a gun, metaphorically, in the form of One for All. You shouldn't expect too much from him. Yeah, like, that's a fair point. And, like, to be honest, the author has relied on this aspect of Izuku being a child to justify some of Izuku's flaws before. Like, Izuku, he has the vulnerabilities of a child for sure, and this has been baked into his character. But then on the other side, you could have the people arguing, well, this is a world where these kids are being treated like soldiers. This is a world where Izuku has 1 year of fighting some really terrifying people. This is a world where, again, these kids are being put in strategic positions and they're being expected to defend against some real, or they're expected to defend some really important assets. If you're putting them in those positions, you're wanting to expect some level of judgment and decision-making capability. And also you could say like, well, this is a manga. We should be seeing idealized versions of these characters. So like, it really depends on what perspective you want to take here. Because like, even in the chapter, going back to Mirio, you see the two extremes here. You have Izuku, who is the relatable character, because he has very ugly flaws that people don't like to acknowledge in themselves. He has them right there. But Mirio's like Asta from Black Clover. Mirio's the Shonen Jump protagonist. Mirio's got he's the paragon in this situation. He's the idealized version of everything. Mirio's actually, like, Izuku here hasn't even experienced the loss of All Might. Mirio's experienced the loss of Night Eye. He survived that. Mirio is the kind of person that has the strength of character to tell Izuku, like, I don't need your power, buddy. You can keep it to yourself. I'll figure out my own thing here. I'll believe in what my mentor said to me, right? Mirio exhibits that greater than thou kind of mentality, or like that paragon of a greater virtue than Izuku does. So that's the issue. Like, when you try and argue that Izuku has a right to be a realistic teenage character who doesn't hear the things that his friends tell him, he doesn't listen to the advice his friends give him, he doesn't properly appreciate the fact that being a hero is a dangerous job. You can definitely play the real boy angle there, but when you have Mirio standing right next to him as the comparison point, and these guys have been compared since the moment Mirio came into the manga, it'd be a little bit harder to argue. But like, again, like, Horikoshi's kind of always been like, this is also kind of Hero Academia. You have the normal people, and then you have the heroic monsters that just don't make sense, like All Might and Mirio. It's just like it's interesting just to look at it and realize, yeah, Mirio and All Might really are more similar than Izuku and All Might are, and like, you know, in some ways that's pretty obvious. But this is one of those moments where it becomes like super clear. The only thing that prevents Mirio from being the perfect one-for-all user is the fact that it would kill him. Also, you know, we talked about this on the live stream, but I found this scene so funny, because it's like, Izuku looks at this at the carnage, then it zooms in on Bakugo, and then it zooms in on a card. It's the card. The card's like, it's only after he sees the card that Izuku freaks out, right? It's such a funny visual. God, when it comes in the anime, that's gonna be a hilarious visual. Not even zoom in on Bakugo's face. Nah, it's the card. All right. That's my first little bit there for Hero Academia. So let's get into it and start talking. The good thing is that a lot of it's textless, so, you know, good stuff. We start the chapter. Oh wait, we start the chapter with a color page. I actually really like the color page. I thought it was really cute. I like thinking that the characters are all just actors in a show, and they, you know, they like hanging out. And mind you, I guess they're about as pretentious as the majority of actors are in the real world. So, like, you know, there are some cons to the viewpoint, but, you know, like to think that they're actors in an alternate universe, just watching their hard work come into play here. I hope they have awesome pizza parties. But yeah, no, it's a super cute image. It's funny to see Toga just gazing at Izuku, like, whatever. And, like, technically Izuku is standing closest to Toga, so that's worth keeping in mind. Honestly, Toga looks nicer when she's wearing regular outfits. Alright, so we start the thing proper. We have Izuku, and we're getting the flashback of, oh, this is how Izuku met the Jets. And again, I'm just really happy that it was in fact the Jets that were doing stuff. So we're looking at page 4, and, you know, at page 4, you gotta really appreciate Horikoshi's attention to not leaving anyone behind. So and also you can see how paranoid Horikoshi is. So you look at page 4, and, like, look at this little panel here about how first he starts off with, hey, you know, we were supposed to be guarding the skies around UA. Okay, so that's Horikoshi saying, like, hey guys, so this was originally what they were doing. You can see this little circle that Horikoshi even went out of his way to highlight. So this is pretty much Horikoshi saying, like, hey guys, see, like, this was actually, the details were in the panel. Like, for anyone that was really paying attention, you could have seen that they were there first, and, you know, you could have figured out that the Jets were helping out. We talked about this in the videos, but, like, moments like this is just Horikoshi pretty much telling the readers, like, hey, you know, there is some plan here. There is a plan here. There is some details that I can use, and I can reward the viewers who are paying attention and seeing the little stuff beforehand. Again, you know, Horikoshi, for all his paranoia, is still one of the best authors to follow when it comes to little details because he does it so consistently. But what we're seeing here is really just he wants to make sure everyone's on the same page on what's going on here. Like the guy he really can't bring anything out of nowhere without justifying where it came from, which again really worthwhile. Doesn't take away from the fact that sometimes he's very cheap, but again, this is a higher tier author when it comes to Shonen Jump. It's you kind of wish that Horikoshi was like, or sorry, you kind of wish that this aspect of Horikoshi was something that the majority of the other authors had, because this is what makes Hero Academia interesting to talk about. The bottom of page 4, you have the justification of why we're ignoring the U.S. and that being like these guys really cared about Star and Stripe. Now, page 5 is just like a whole hype up page. What I found really interesting on 5 is just that they seem to want Izuku to just latch onto them, which I think is lame. Like, why swing from jet to jet? You can just jump on one of these jets, tie yourself down, and pull a Star and Stripe and let these jets just carry you. You don't have to do the swinging. These things are hypersonic. Getting to the first jet isn't going to give you a significant advantage when everything's moving so quickly. Anyway, like that's I think one of the more ridiculous parts. But you know, it makes for a better panel. So like I'm assuming that once Izuku got to the top jet, you know, they just kind of drove. And let's just say that's how it happened. Anyway, we have page 6. Shigaraki's favorite person arrives. And he's noting that Izuku got stronger. We did see the third user's effects happening here, and like last chapter I pointed out, that's the third user. Now what I think is worthwhile, is there anything cool on page 6? I'm not sure. There's the smash with the special effects here. I don't think this means that Shigaraki used the smash himself. But we have Shigaraki making some observations. The glowing energy, I've seen it before. So at that moment in time, that's the all for once memories being activated. It's cool to see the third user going all out in that shot. I really hope that we get the flashbacks. This makes me kind of feel like these things are all going to be like tied together, and we'll see like a story that features these panels. It's just, this is going to be one of the last critical flashbacks of Hero Academia, so I'm just very excited to see it. Alright, so page 7. So we see Shigaraki get like really tossed around. Cool stuff. He gets hit by the lightning. We have the information that Mirio is in the cage. And then we have the information that, well, look at this. This is actually really interesting. Buddy Girl Mandalay is next to the computers. So I'm guessing the computers are right beneath Aizawa's spot. So that kind of explains how they're able to do all their stuff without the computers getting messed up by the electricity. So they're communicating probably with everywhere else, and they're outside of the cage, so their electronics are working well enough. Now, mind you, they are getting this signal. They're able to tell that Midori is in the cage. No one else here is frantic about the whole thing about them losing the systems or someone's trying to hack into the systems. So I'm thinking this is indicative of there's a counter going on Skeptic. They look a lot calmer, but it's just interesting that Mandalay is in there with them. In the last chapter, where was she? Was she inside the entire time? I don't think she was. Anyway, we have Izuku going into "So sorry I'm late, are you all alright?" And then we see this. Now, I just gotta say, this scene here, you know, for a battlefield where explosions are going off, where a guy fired a plasma cannon, where another guy is ripping up the ground and just like, you know, making it a gardener's worst nightmare, this does not look that bad. There's not that much carnage. You know, I kind of expected more panels to be uprooted from the earth. But yeah, nah, like, this is not the worst situation. Anyway, that's not the point. We have the whole thing with Izuku having just not thinking, and he's freaking out because the All Might card like is pretty damaged. It's a very valuable card, and Izuku's like just freaking out. He's looking over to Best Jeanist. He freaks out some more. Now, one thing that's really worth pointing out here is that Izuku does not linger on Bakugo. The only thing he lingers on is the card. And then he just looks everywhere else. Good on Best Jeanist. We go into the next page, page 10. So there's some critical details here. Nejire is fine, even though she got hit by boulders that were launched with All Might level strength. So I don't know in what world that makes sense. Sun Eater is actually the one in the most danger here. Because like if I'm Izuku and I see Sun Eater, well actually no, because like I'd have a better thought process than Izuku in this situation. If I if I see Sun Eater, I'm thinking like shit. The guy's holding his stomach. He's about to have diarrhea. Like I don't all those things he ate. There's no way his stomach is going to agree with the medley of bugs that he ingested. All right, that poor guy. He's about to lose all his power up, and it's gonna be bad. And then you have Mirko. Now Mirko was originally on top of the tree, so she somehow slid down. She doesn't have anything sticking into her body, so props to her. Like My Hero Academia durability, 110%, really powerful here. The fact that she was able to come off the tree though tells me that she's conscious, so I'm hoping to see some more here. She should have just been looking at Izuku, just giving, actually I don't know how she's going to give a thumbs up, but should have been smiling, just to calm him down a little bit more. Then we have the trolling. I love that he was able to guess that it was Toga's doing, because like Toga like really pulled a miracle to be able to pull Izuku into that portal. And actually for this little one where like Shigaraki's being a bit of a creep and he's saying go ahead and make an excuse, there was nothing I could do, I never saw it coming, I actually think that's pretty good provocation. I kind of wish we saw Izuku like actually reflecting on it though. I wish he was able to say like, yeah, I shouldn't have been pulled by a little girl and her little string. The reality is, like, when it comes to Izuku, like, see, if it was Mirio would have been in a complete different situation, because the Night Eye fighting style relies on always paying attention. That's how you survive Shizaki. But Izuku never really learned it, and he never really honed himself on it. And like Izuku is still like so over reliant on his quirks. I really think that whole thing that En told him about like you idolize quirks way too much. I think this is, given that this kid is not learning any lessons in any arena that we've seen thus far. Yeah, no. Like, he probably still does idealize quirks. He probably still doesn't understand, like, quirks are tools. And, like, tools can fail if you're not careful. But, yeah, no, I actually liked what Shigaraki said to him here because, yeah, he didn't see it coming because Izuku is over-reliant on danger sense. I would love for Izuku to just, like, really burn about that. Anyway, we have the run from responsibility just like they did. Now, actually, run from responsibility. I wonder. I think is that Shigaraki talking there, like maybe talking about the people that left him behind. Like the heroes didn't run away from responsibility here. But anyway, we have finally a zoom in on Bakugo's face, and then the All Might card yet again. God, that card. Imagine your friend is dead, and that card gets the same billing. Imagine. I make fun of it, but like you can tell what Horikoshi intended. He's saying like, yo, this card represents their bond. But like, I don't see that. That card represents Bakugo's admiration for All Might. What that card, all that it says is that Izuku and Bakugo just happened to get the card on the same day. Bakugo probably was super pissed that Izuku got one too. It just establishes them as the true fans of All Might kind of thing. That card has more to do with Bakugo and All Might than it does Bakugo and Izuku, because of the way that the author like brings it about. I still just find this awkward. I think this is probably like one of the worst choices. I think like again, you put like a really bad taste in the mouth when you specifically pass over Bakugo and you zoom in on that card. You should have zoomed in on Bakugo. You can keep this panel here, but like it just leaves a bad taste in the mouth. That, and like again, I mentioned this. The interpretation that Horikoshi wants you to have, that being the card connects Bakugo and Izuku. Bakugo is more important than the connection to Izuku. But the interpretation, that's the interpretation the author wanted you to have, because it links them to their childhood and all that kind of stuff, but it's not well executed. In my opinion. You could argue. Like, the reality is, if you can see that the interpretation is, like, this is the card that connects them, then it's fine. But if you're saying that, you're probably a really good reader. So props to you for being a really good reader. I assume that everyone that watches these videos are very good readers. Page 12. We have the return of the Izuku Rage Face. I love that he's gagging himself, because, like, I don't know what this is supposed to be doing, but, like, I love that he's gagging himself. It's pretty funny. Now, here's another little bit of author paranoia. But it's actually, like, this is a really good example of, like, this is just a really good move in general. Because you would be thinking, like, you're getting the person with the most firepower in the world, you're getting them angry, but then you have Shigaraki saying, when you stoke this one's anger, his moves get real pathetically simplistic. I'll counter his next attack and crack his spine. Come on, do it. Admit it, you love the present I got you. So, like, this rationalization, you know, on first glance it makes sense. It's a counter, but what he really underestimated here was how much Izuku was just gonna be standing in place, just blowing air. Also, actually, that's not air problem. That's probably smoke. He's probably blowing smoke out, and that smoke, when it hits someone, it hits hard enough to be able to push them back. Yeah, that's probably smoke. That's probably smoke screen coming out there. That force. Anyway, yeah, he underestimated how long Izuku would be there. Now, one example to like really compare this to is One Piece, because what you see here is All For One is I'm gonna react to you type of guy. He's not really I'm gonna set the tone of the battlefield kind of guy. Like this is his character. So him saying I'm gonna wait for you to come and then I'll slap back. This is actually really in line with who he is. But you know, the thing that makes this scene a little bit worse too is that if you look, for example, at One Piece, One Piece has a situation where a character, you know, he loses focus in the middle of a battle. And unlike Hero Academia, where when you lose focus in the middle of battle, you don't really get penalized. In One Piece, he did get really penalized. Ultimately, someone ended up dying because someone took the opportunity to hit him while he wasn't ready. The situation here with Izuku, that whole time where Mirio is just yanking at Izuku, I really think Shigaraki could have picked up a rock, and mind you, he doesn't have a good rate. He doesn't have a good success rate with throwing rocks at people, but he could have flicked a rock at Izuku's face, at least bashed some teeth in or something like that. Like this is the guy who went all the, you know, he went out of his way to get like superhuman strength here, right? So you kind of would expect you would want this kind of thing to happen. At the moment, there was too much time for Shigaraki to make a move, so doing the whole wait and doing the whole I'm gonna wait for you to come at me and counter, like it's just it's a wasted opportunity, but it is consistent with everything we've seen from All For One. Mirko should be dead by now, but All For One just he doesn't like finishing people off unless he's like feeling nervous, and so far the only person that made him nervous is Bakugo. Okay, so actually I'm looking at the Viz translation. Mirio going in there and saying, I get it, you're feeling like you'll never live this down. Bro, like, never live this down is the kind of thing that you say to someone who did something embarrassing. This isn't embarrassing. This is tragic. This isn't about never... Imagine that you're telling him, like, yo, man, I know that you feel bad that you'll never recover from this. Like, yo, bro, I know you feel bad that you'll never financially recover from this. I know that you feel bad, but yo, you're falling into the villain's trap. Right now, your feelings are not what matters, Izuku. But actually, the way that Viz translated how this was going makes it look a little bit sillier. Just like, cause that wording is just so casual. Oh yeah, Izuku. Oh man, it sucks that you're never gonna live this down. Holy Izuku, yeah, I feel bad for you. Man, meanwhile, Bakugo's missing a heart. But yeah, Izuku, you'll never live this down. Tell him that, hey, Izuku, everyone's still alive. You're kind of jumping the gun here. People aren't dead. Telling him that Bakugo's being saved. Honestly, that could have freaked Izuku out more. Because if Izuku hears like, oh, the others are okay, then that means Bakugo. Oh, no, Bakugo's dead. That could have been pretty brutal. Actually, looking at it now, the way this is actually coming out, I don't know if this was meant to help Izuku or not. Anyway, you know, you're at a position where Mirio's telling Izuku to not lose the faith because he hasn't lost the faith. He has to point out, hey, the fight's not over yet. We can't have you freaking out just yet. Like, there's still people here. Like, imagine needing to be reminded that there's still people who are alive and in danger of being killed. Oh. Teenagers, the endless sanctimony, the empty talk, all to avoid facing facts and reality. That's, again, I think that's some good stuff from Shigaraki. I think it's kind of, I think it is a little ridiculous that Shigaraki is kind of shouting over the special effects going on in the background. He's like competing not only with Mirio, but he's competing with Izuku's yells here. That is a little funny. Let's see. We have Mirio giving some rhetoric about being heroes. Heroes have to talk the talk, and they have to be the ones to say it because they're going to be the ones to transform ideals into reality. So that all makes sense. It's just pretty much like, no, obviously, guy, obviously we're going to be like fighting for the good. Like, we have no choice here. We're going to try and beat you. So that was just pretty simple. We have the bottom of page 15 where Izuku's finally calming down. And here is like, see, what Mirio ultimately does, or what the author ultimately does to elevate Mirio, is he takes away autonomy from Izuku. How cool would it have been if Izuku, when he starts freaking out, he himself is recalling these things, and you know, maybe he's struggling with himself. Maybe like when he gags himself, you can have like some kind of rhetoric of like, I have to like control my anger. Even just having Izuku saying at the beginning of the freak out, I need to control myself, but like it's so hard. Him acknowledging that anger is hard to deal with, that would have been a gigantic step from last time. There's so many little things you can put in here just to tweak the execution on this, to just not take away so much autonomy from Izuku to make him look like a kid that has to be saved from himself yet again. You really could have gone down that direction, just because, especially here, we've seen Izuku freak out before. You kind of want to see progression. You don't want to see the same exact reason for a freak out. I really think just giving more to Izuku would have been good. I think it's a bad move to have Mirio being the one to jumpstart Izuku's rational processes, because it makes the whole thing look silly. It's like all it took was a guy talking to him, you know, to just like snap him out of it. This is, at some point, Izuku has to be able to do that for himself, and this would have been one of those moments. I also think it's funny that, you know, he's thinking of All Might and he's thinking of the pilot that he just met. Banjo having one slot there I think was really good though. Anyway, we have page 16, and you have Izuku breaking out of it. You have Izuku saying sorry. You have Mirio like, whatever, we're all good. We have the shot of the Vestiges and Izuku teaming up. They're gonna fight. Izuku is recognizing All For One as All For One and not Shigaraki, so we're going to be dealing with that. Now here we do see that the All Might Vestige and Yoichi's Vestige aren't there. I had an idea that maybe, given that All might be with Bakugo, maybe Yoichi flew off to go see All For One or something like that. You never really know, like, because like the rules change the more All For One and One For All interact. So like Yoichi could be like, yeah, ever since you touched the inside of Izuku All For One, like I've been able to leave Izuku's body more often. That's all you really need to say to make that work. One of the things about this too is, like, again, for the checklist feeling, is that the freak out in real time lasts for like less. Heck, if you're reading it, the freak out lasts like less than 20 seconds. If you're gonna watch it, it probably only lasts less than a minute. I doubt it would go longer than a minute. So like, you know, you're at the situation here where like he has this massive freak out, it's causing massive damage, but yeah, you know, you just get through it so quickly. This is one of those situations where I really think, when you're going to show a character breaking down, if you don't want to make it seem silly, you kind of have to spend more time in it. And in this one, like, it just aids that checklist feeling. Again, it feels like the author knew that Izuku had to freak out, he had to react to Bakugo, and he just like did it really quickly. He put Mirio in there so that, you know, you're reminded of Mirio. Yeah, this is one of those spots where, you know, you want to linger in it more. I will say that though, if you looked at the way I was talking about the video, a lot of things are really consistent here. Mirio's position in Izuku's life, super consistent. Izuku's flaws, consistent. Like, there's no way around this. Ever since Izuku told Bakugo that he flat out did not hear what Bakugo said about being stupid or about rushing him by himself, you knew that you were dealing with a very special young man, alright? So, very consistent in that regard there. Just think, like, on execution, some spots here could have been done better. But, you know, that's my thoughts. God, I had fun, actually. I had a lot of fun. You know, it's been a while since I ragged on Izuku. And actually, you know, am I ragging on Izuku? Yeah, I guess I am. It's been a while. Like, back in the day, I really loved ragging on Izuku, but then I found Dabi, and then Dabi, like, kind of just changed me forever. And then All For One sometimes takes it, but, like, Commenter White Despair has the market cornered on All For One. But yeah, no, this actually felt really good. It felt really good to make fun of Izuku again. And I can do it because, like, Shigaraki was making fun of him, and Shigaraki took him for a fool. If it wasn't for Mirio, Izuku would have been a fool. Like, Izuku doesn't learn lessons. He just kind of hears people say something and he forgets that they said it, and then he just kind of repeats the same thing. Like, he tells himself, like, oh no man, like, it's only me, I'm the only one that gets to suffer, I'm gonna deal with this, everyone else should be okay. Yeah, I wish Izuku could at least, like, tell himself, like, I have to stop over relying on danger sense, but you know, you're probably not gonna get that either. Anyway, I hope we get to see the Vestiges spiritually beating up All for One, because that'd be hilarious too. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I hope we get to see more Izuku versus Shigaraki. Now, again, one of the big issues is this is pretty exciting here because we're going into a matchup. Like, you know, last time we started with Izuku punching Shigaraki or like kicking Shigaraki, and we ended with Izuku telling All for One that, hey, you know, like we're pretty much going in for the fight. You know, that's the other issue with the chapter, just kind of stalls. But yeah, I don't know what the author's going to do with Toga and Spinner anymore. So that'll be a surprise whenever he decides to bring them up again. Anyway, guys, let me know what you thought down below. You know, I actually feel a lot better about the chapter as I got to, like, express myself. I hope you had fun, and till next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.